Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
With the death of Nelson Mandela, we've been discussing tribalism, which is how humans have organized themselves for all of our history, which works fine if you're a band of people out in the middle of nowhere and share kinship, and there's another group that wants to, basically take your hunting lands from you. That's how you operate. But the globalists, the empires, going back to Rome and before, they scientifically studied tribes and how to manipulate them. And I have read, no exaggeration, let's not exaggerate, I don't know, 30, 40, probably more, books by the British Empire, published for the British Empire, published by the Roman Empire, published by anthropology, sociology textbooks. And that's really what the elite are into, is how they manipulate you. And their culture is really eugenics, ultra-slavery, hatred of humanity, mega-authoritarians. And how do you explain that to somebody that's been raised on NFL tribalism, or Ford versus Chevy, or Coke versus Pepsi? I mean, you see how they do this everywhere. And then it turns out Coke and Pepsi are basically interlocking corporations, the same people. It's like England has 2 big grocery store chains. And it turns out they're owned by the same people. It's just, we're literally under a colonization of the mind. I want to free people's mind because I think everybody's beautiful and great and has interesting attributes. The problem is once someone's bought into collectivism and has been programmed by tribalism, it doesn't matter if you individually don't hate them. They hate you because of your color. And even if you try to talk them out of it, they think they have power over you now in political correctness. If you're one of the chosen bad groups, just reverse racism, I'm the bad white person. And then there's no way to deprogram most of those folks because the social engineers have done this for so long. This is their identity. Their culture is being racially upset with the social race pimps, the race hustlers, reaffirming on top and manipulating the entire program. And when you look at tribalism, I've realized more and more, we have to act like sports teams. We have to put our ideas out very simply and then connect them to the more complex ideas to counter folks that are like zombies. And that's what I've said. We need to have our own gangs. People go, what, like Crips and Bloods? No. Or the Ku Klux Klan? No. I'm saying Second Amendment, property rights, liberty, free market. That's why the establishment, the left today, attacks the movie Scarface so much, because it backfired on them. Because you've got this entrepreneur character, even though he's a bad guy, he's a good guy at the end, doesn't kill kids, makes the right decision at the end. And he says, I like everybody but a communist. That's slavery. You want somebody telling you what to eat, what to sleep, what to do? You want to not have enough food to eat? You want a rat on every corner telling you what to do? We have to literally fight this communist collectivism with our own tribalism of forget what color you are. It's what Martin Luther King actually said. Even though the left tried to control him and communists, he was getting away from them. That's why they killed him, because he was getting off the whole left-right reservation. Judge someone by the content of their deeds and their heart and how they act and what they do. You judge a tree by its fruits. Not what they say on the surface, but what do they actually do? And Nelson Mandela was only a puppet and a front man, though he was a very interesting, smart guy. I'm not saying that he wasn't an interesting guy and a manly man, big warlord king of the whole area of Africa. Notice the media never says that. Like, he just came from nowhere, a nice person over here, and everyone grovels to him in fear because of, whatever. When you really get down to the end of the day, he totally, to get out of prison, and I don't know, 27 years in solitary confinement, I say I won't sell out, but I don't know. The point is he came out and totally sold everybody out. And that's why all the CFR, New World Order people are worshiping him. So I want to get calls from South Africa, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Or if you lived in South Africa and left, black, white, French, Dutch, British, I don't care. I want to hear from you, 800-259-9231. Stay with us. Well, Nelson Mandela, at 95 years of age, died. And we covered in the last hour what really happened in South Africa, how the British government wanted to break down the country to replace one form of tyranny with another. But we've already covered that. We're going to cover it more. I'd like to hear specifically from people in South Africa, or if you live in Australia, the United States, Europe, if you've left South Africa, if you're a black South African, white South African, French South African, because they're all in different groups, Dutch South African, mixed South African, whatever. What is your take on how South Africa is now, 20 years after Mandela? Because it's been about 20 years since he was in there as president. What is your take on the divide and conquer that's now taking place, and how they use that opportunity for unity, I believe for division? But you know more about it than I do. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. You got to dial your country code and call in on that, or use your IP phone to do that. It's 800-259-9231. I know there's a direct line folks can call as well. And John Harmon up there on the network, you want to come on air and tell folks that number, because I should have had that, but I'm on the road today.
Sure, that number is 1, or the international number would be 00 and then 1 and then 651-695-7755. Those are for international callers.
And you're on air right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, because I'm in East Texas from a funeral. They're in Austin at the Infowars News Center, and then you're in Minnesota. And thank you very much, John Harmon. And again, give that number out one more time.
That's 001-651-695-7755.
All right, we should get John Harmon on air more often. So please call in. We'd like to hear from you, whether you're an expatriate or whether you're visiting the United States or whether you're listening on the internet. I know we get calls routinely from South Africa. I know it's caused quite a stir when I've been on South African radio shows. And they've actually had the government try to tell them not to have me back on anymore. I mean, that's the type of tyranny now that's going on there. So they've replaced one form of oppression with another. And it's statistically much worse, as folks said it would be. See, you're like, what, are you for apartheid? No. I'm saying the globalists are even more evil than this on record. And they are going to want to totally oppress everybody and social engineer them. It's like the Borg versus, you know, some good old boys who actually want prosperity. And again, we need tribalism of liberty, not tribalism of race or even religion, because, you know, we got a black fellow from Georgia coming on who had a gun at his own business, and people complained. So the cops said, well, why don't you get a concealed carry? So he got that, and they came and arrested him and haven't given him his gun back or any of it, and a bunch of other stuff. And see, I'm as offended if it was a black person, a white person, or whatever. In fact, I never even, when I first heard about it on the radio, I didn't think, is it a black person, is it a white person? I just thought it's somebody having their rights violated. It's like that lady, that black lady that got scared at the checkpoint, and so they chased her down and killed her. I immediately came on and said, this is the tyranny of Washington and the paranoia of terrorism and this police state. And I literally saw YouTube comments, and I showed them on air, and comments on Infowars saying she was driving a nice car. You're just mad that some white lady got killed. Because that was right during the Trayvon Martin thing, or at the end of it. People were so racially charged up. And then when it turned out she was a black lady, I had such an outpouring of liberal blacks then loving me, like I defended a black lady. I didn't even think, what color is this woman? They just killed some woman in front of her kid who was unarmed. I just don't get it. I mean, you know, you bleed red, I'm for you. And it's so frustrating to see the people. Anyways, I'm ranting. 800-259-9231. We want to hear from folks with their take on South Africa. If you live there, or even if you visited, or if you're a historian, your take on it. I see a lot of callers coming in, Jim in Texas and others who lived in South Africa. But we've got some other news we've got to hit on two different fronts. And DrudgeReport.com has a red link to our article about thumb scanning in these prison tunnels that lock you in at the airport. Those are going into more airports. That's an incredible story we've got to cover. But this West Point traitor, this globalist operative in Esquire saying, you know, the military will get our guns, break down this information.
Well, you know, Alex, what he was writing his essay in Esquire essentially about was a 2010 Supreme Court decision, Heller versus D.C. Now, that was a Supreme Court decision that established, as according to a 5-4 decision, that the Second Amendment is about an individual right. And, of course, that's really the crux of the debate. People on the authoritarian left have tried to portray this as something that is a right that belongs to government. And that's the tack that this guy, who was a West Point history instructor, that's the tack that he's taking throughout his entire article. He says, my job at the end of the day is about killing, and I orchestrate violence, but my profession is about directed violence on behalf of the nation. But see, the way that he defines the nation is the federal government, not the individual people. And to say that the Bill of Rights, especially the Second Amendment, is about establishing powers for the government is just amazingly an amazing lie, because the entire 10 Bill of Rights was about individual rights. And then they summed it up with the 10th Amendment and said, oh, no, by the way, if we haven't given anything specifically to the government, it's still reserved to the people and to the individual states. And so,
and by the way, the Violence Policy Center 13 years ago, in the front page of the Dallas, the Austin American Statesman, whenever we caught bribery at the Capitol, they literally in the paper quoted the head of the Violence Policy Center, and he said, it doesn't matter what Mr. Jones does. He's going to die, and with him, his Second Amendment. We've got your kids in the schools. And then here's this West Point professor, she's in the article, because I see it on Infowars.com, saying, doesn't matter, we're going to get your guns anyways, but for sure when you die. And so it is about killing a culture, and it's so sick that this guy shows Marxist training when they say, we've got your kids. And I can't believe we just turn our kids over to these people. Go ahead.
That's right. And, of course, at West Point, he taught history because he's about shaping the worldview. That's why he believes that he can take the guns from your cold, dead hand. He says he hopes that he doesn't have to kill you. Of course, he will if he has to. He'll tell his
and
he has to, but he thinks
and it's worse.
Inherit it. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's worse. It's worse. The scandal is, why are they putting these people in everywhere?
Yes.
You know, it just came out 2 weeks ago that the person teaching history and law and a bunch of other stuff at another West Point type installation, one of the biggest in the country, Texas A&M. And it's not just this one professor. The bunch of them are doing it. They're bringing him in and literally saying, we're going to take your guns. And she said the rest of the Bill of Rights, free speech, everything.
That's right. Well, and of course, this guy is writing for Esquire. He's also written for the Small Wars Journal. And if you remember back to the summer of 2012, there was a lot said about an article that they had called Full Spectrum Operations in the Homeland, A Vision of the Future. Do you remember that? Where they were saying,
yes, when they said they're preparing for war with the Tea Party.
That's right. The Tea Party was taking over after hard times and a bad economy. They had taken over one town. And so this was their gaming scenario, how they were going to fight the Tea Party people who had taken over Darlington, South Carolina. Now, he didn't write that particular article, but he writes many, many articles for the Small Wars Journal. He's also...
But see, that's even more important. That's even more important. Again, it's infested. It's not this one guy. It's most of them. I mean, I'll turn on C-SPAN and see an Army War College briefing for generals. And I mean, it sounds like the most it sounds like a science fiction movie of the bad guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and you know, so this is very relevant because you remember when we were down in San Antonio and you and Anthony Gucciardi were talking to the police chief because we had this open carry rally down there at the Alamo. And and you asked him, he's point blank, you and Anthony were asking him, would you confiscate guns if you were ordered to do so? And he said, well, that's a hypothetical.
Just dropped.
See, they have hypothetical scenarios. That's exactly what they train in all the time is hypothetical scenarios. That's what the Small Wars Journal is about. It was about a hypothetical scenario where they could have the operation in the homeland, their vision of the future where they're fighting Tea Party people to confiscate their guns. So to say that I can't tell you whether I would confiscate your guns or not because that's a hypothetical scenario. Everything that they train with is hypothetical. And they are creating scenarios where the federal government, where the military is going against individual citizens because, as this fellow points out, he doesn't see it as an individual right. He sees it as...
Absolutely.
Right. It's all about continuity of government. It's not about individual liberty.
All right. We're going to go to phone calls now. Again, I'm hosting the broadcast. David Knight is popping in with expert analysis and breaking news. We'll have to get to the other news on Japan and warnings there that they're going under a fascist coup. Congress is having hearings on Obama being a dictator. The presidency is now a dictatorship by every measurement. We're going to go to that, but we have calls from Switzerland. We have calls from Texas. Both people lived in South Africa, so I'm going to skip this network break. I'm skipping this network break so that we have time to get to these callers and then also have David shift gears and get into other news. But if you hear me jumping in and getting upset, hearing all these West Point commanders teaching war with the Tea Party, we're going to take your guns, we're going to kill you. He actually says, we're going to take it from your hand. I mean, this is absolute sedition, absolute enemy infiltration. And Americans love to follow authority so much, they're going to try to have a Boer war here, folks. I'm telling you. They are going to come after the gun owners. And by the way, all you idiots that are going to side with them, you're going to be slaves when they're done, you idiots. Excuse me, I'm getting angry here, folks. I can't believe that our own military leadership is openly teaching treason and sedition and overthrow. They are criminal infiltrators, according to the Bill of Rights and Constitution. They have broken their oaths. They are involved in sedition. Thank you, David Knight. Let's talk to and chime in anytime you want on these gentlemen. Jim in Texas, lived in South Africa. Then we'll talk to Swiss Mountain in Switzerland. Thank you for holding. Jim, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. From the time I was born until I was 12 years old, I lived in Rhodesia in Victoria Falls from 68 until 80, until the government fell. And from that point on, I lived 5 years in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, as a young boy... Sir,
do me a favor. Back off your phone a little bit. It's overdriven. For those that don't know, Rhodesia was when the British captured the north area of South Africa, the northeast. They named it after their Illuminati chieftain who openly called for world government and who set up the Rhodes Scholarship. So you were born in Rhodesia. Go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. My father was in the Rhodesian Army. In fact, he was a captain in one of the companies in the Rhodesian African Rifles, which was a black and white unit, mixed battalions. Growing up, there was no racial strife whatsoever in Rhodesia. The Hosas and the Dabalis were the major black tribes. We lived in neighborhoods. I had black neighbors. I had, you call them colored. They were the ones that, maybe had a white parent. There was interracial. There was no problem. No racial strife whatsoever until the ZANLA, Zimbabwean African National People's Liberation Army, communists who are Chinese-backed, began their insurgency from Zambia. Now, why is this important? Because Nelson Mandela was a ZANLA operative. They were the ones who set him up. Winnie Mandela and her little soccer boys, that they call them, were a bunch of little terrorists that would go around killing members of the Zulus and the Dabalis in South Africa that did not support their communist attitudes. Now, when after Rhodesia fell in 1980, my family, my father and my mother and my brothers and sisters and I moved to Cape Town, which is the English-speaking area, the British versus the Dutch area of South Africa, and my father became a policeman. What Mandela and his ilk would do is terrorize. They were cowards, Alex. They wouldn't attack the policemen in the police stations. They would kidnap and torture and terrorize the family members of the policemen. And when I hear people exclaiming how wonderful Nelson, especially that evil woman, Winnie Mandela, when they are singing their praises, they wouldn't feel the same way if they would have had a family member, usually innocent children, coming home from the private schools that we were forced to go to. They would kidnap the children of police officers and set them on fire. These are 5- and 6-year-old little children that Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela and the other ZANLA terrorists used to torture and kill.
And by the way, you point that out. I mean, of course he was part of that group. He was to be the king of that particular tribe. And notice I never even point that out. And that, again, they went around murdering other tribes of blacks that didn't want to be communist. You're absolutely right. That's mainline history. You lived it. And it's just crazy to sit there and see none of that on the news, and they are sanctifying him like he is the Saint Mary or something. I mean, I have never seen anything like it. What is it like for you living in the United States now? I guess you're a U.S. citizen now, it sounds like it. I can't even, hear your South African accent. What is it like to see people who I guarantee you can't even find South Africa on a map? I guarantee I would argue with you and call you a racist if you didn't literally put a tire around your child's head and burn that white devil for Mandela. Will you not kill your children now, sir, to show you're not racist?
There you go, absolutely. And you can look at the Zulu tribes, which were very anti-Mandela. The Zulus were criticized for being part of the apartheid government, when in fact they were just very decent people. The Zulus never have been terrorists. The Zulus never have had any allegations of murdering white children or black children or anything. The Zulus are they have a very strong political...
they had a warrior code. They had a warrior, like a chivalry, like knights.
Exactly, and the Zulus did not care for any of the communists at all. And even the Zulu chiefs would denounce Mandela publicly because of the methods he would use to try and end apartheid. All apartheid was, as you correctly stated, Alex, was the white tribe trying to maintain itself against the other black tribes. The blacks in South Africa, even to this day, are very tribal, and then they would criticize the whites, which are referred to as Europeans, in Africa. White Africans are referred to as Europeans, even though I've never been to Europe. For us, for being tribal ourselves, we would be criticized while they would maintain their tribalism. So the Zulus were good. The communists, the Baileys and Hosas were not very good. They were terrorists. They were murderers. They were insurgents backed by the communist Chinese. And Nelson Mandela, now that he's dead, I hope he rots in hell and suffers pain for eternity for what he and Winnie Mandela did to innocent people.
All right, well, that's from somebody that lived it, and I'd love to hear from any, other South Africans, black South Africans. I don't care. All I know is I've studied it, and yeah, the Russians, the Chinese, on record, would go into African countries where there were basically no whites north of there, and would just kill everybody. I mean, it's like, well, when the Soviets kill Africans, it's loving and cutesy cute. And it's just, now look at South Africa, folks. It is a hell hole of communism now. But our media, you'd never know it. You would never know what South Africa's like now, because the foreign banks came in, the British Empire came in, they finally conquered it with political correctness. And I just wish that everybody would have worked together. I know they tried to with the Zulus to actually get real liberty and try to unify. But then once Mandela, he unified them around communism with sports. And then would, this soccer team or the rugby team went and met with him, and it was a white team, and then, they're all friends now. That was just for outside consumption, from what I've read. Let's talk to Swiss Mountain, who lived in South Africa. What is your take on all this and what the last caller said, Swiss Mountain?
Hi, Alex. It's nice to talk to you. Well, I think the previous caller romanticizes the Zulu nation a bit, even though I did vote for the Inkatha Freedom Party in the 94 elections. But, I mean, that election in itself is completely rigged. I just wanted to sort of mention a lesser-known point that P.W. Botha, before he went out, he was actually starting to move South Africa towards a system of the cantons, as we have it in Switzerland, or as you have the states in America. And I think that's one of the reasons why they took him out so quickly, why F.W. de Klerk just completely usurped the National Party back then, and started working with Mandela to bring in the coalition government, which eventually led to ANC rule.
And again, for those that don't know, the average American literally can't even, the average government-trained American cannot find their feet with both hands or their butt either. But for folks that don't know, you have the Inkatha group connected to the Zulus, and then you have the ANC, of course, with Mandela and the communists and the rest of them. Give us your take on living there and why you left and what you'd like to say to folks calling from Switzerland.
Well, I mean, I left because it just got to the point where I wasn't safe anymore. And your gun rights were virtually zero. So for me to get a gun to protect myself was not the way to go. So I just decided, okay, I'll leave, thanks. The other reason why I left was because there was so much killing, and I'm not just talking killing where they go and they shoot somebody. They torture people. They torture people in the most horrendous, psychopathic ways before they finally let them die. There's an extermination happening in South Africa of white farmers. I don't know where these people are going to get their food from. They're most probably going to get genetically manipulated food from the UN. But it was just psychologically so horrendous to live there, I just had to leave.
And of course, other areas of Africa, they have exterminated all the whites, actually exterminated the few farmers that stayed behind and are now collapsing, like Zimbabwe. And again, the average American hears the word Zimbabwe and just thinks it's a foreign planet. They, what do you want to tell Americans that naively think that communism in Africa is a wonderful thing?
I want to tell them to read history, and read lots of it. And the only thing I can say to the American listeners is there's so much love and support for you from all around the world. We're all in this together. I think Thomas Paine even said we're all Americans in this cause of liberty. And we've just got to keep on educating people. We've got to interject small pieces of information to those that are entirely numb and try to tune in on their level to raise them up even the slightest little bit. And apart from that, I'm so impressed with people running for local government in America. That's the way to take it back. Apartheid South Africa was the worst. If you were a black living under the apartheid regime, that's what you guys are fighting against right now. It was horrendous for the black people as well, because I grew up with them.
Well, I want to hear how bad apartheid was when we come back. We've got another guest coming on, but I want to give you 2 minutes to finish up, ma'am, and we'll be getting the guest on. But I want you to give that perspective as well. Please stay there. Don't hang up. Swiss Mountain.
And Alex is doing the show live, remote. It's amazing how we can get technology to do that. I'm here just in case we have some problems, and we had a momentary problem, so that's why I came in. But now we're
all right. I'm back here. I'm right here with you, David. Thank you so much. And we've got a special guest coming up that the guys lined up from WSB TV. First reported businessman arrested for loitering, carrying legal gun on his own property in Atlanta, Georgia, or outside Atlanta. The good Californians, I guess, that have moved into the area, if they see anyone with a gun, they call the police, and the police say, look, doesn't matter if your gun's legal or not, we're going to take it because the Californians don't like seeing it. And that's an oversimplification. I love a lot of Californians. I love the state of California. It's very beautiful. But a lot of my problems, everybody I know who lives on a ranch has had their California neighbors, that's who's moved to Austin, to the Texas Hill Country, call the police on them when they shoot their guns even a mile away. And it's a reign of terror. And that's basically what happened to this gentleman. We're getting him on the line. Going to talk to him in a second. But a lady going by the name Swiss Mountain, I wanted to hear from South Africans, black South Africans, white South Africans, human beings who've lived in South Africa in the hellish stuff that's gone on there. And, you know, get your real perspective on Nelson Mandela. And we were about to go to break, but she was talking about how bad apartheid was as well, to give that perspective. So living there and watching apartheid, you were trying to make a point. Swiss Mountain calling from Switzerland. To go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, well, I mean, the amazing thing for white South Africans was that you had help in the house that were black. Women that worked in the kitchen, for example. And I grew up with these people and with their children. And under apartheid, their children were not allowed to be with them. They had to go back to the townships. And my mother was against this, and we had several visits from the police where she just didn't allow them inside. So then you had your pass laws where black people had to carry their papers on them at all times and could be searched anywhere. It really wasn't a nice system to be under if you were in the wrong skin color category. So I can understand why people like Nelson Mandela got really, really annoyed at this. I don't agree with his methods in the least, nor do I agree with Umkhonto we Sizwe or any of those organizations that they started up. I mean, they also had their fair share of child soldiers and misery that they spread. But the fact of the matter is you can't really have a libertarian system there, because every single African tribe in South Africa has a hierarchy that's based on monarchy. So they know nothing else. And it's going to take a hell of a long time for them to start grasping individual rights and life beyond a chieftainship that has a monarchy above it.
Well, that's what I was pointing out, is that they basically broke Mandela regardless. In 27 years in prison, he was going to be the king of one of the major tribes. The media never points out that he's royalty. I mean, over large areas. This is not like some local chief. It was like actual royalty. and very brutal. And then they bring him in, and then he claims there's all this unity. It's just absolutely trading out one group of controllers for another. And from all the South Africans I've talked to, black, white, doesn't matter, they say South Africa has gotten innumerably worse. Has that been your experience, or is that not true?
Absolutely. It's gone from bad to worse. If you ask black people today, they say, please bring back apartheid, because it was just so much better for us.
So even though it was horrible, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, everybody says they had work, they had livelihood. It was just, that's the great big irony of it, is because now you've got the system of the ANC in power that is so oligarchic in their own right. Of course, they're coupled with the New World Order, make no mistake. There's a lot of little minions there in the ANC government that have a business with a higher agenda. For example, chipping babies. They want to start chipping babies in hospitals in Johannesburg, I think. They want to put e-tags on your car if you want to drive on the highway. All of these
Amazing.
things.
Well, we're going to have to open the phones up again when I get back to Austin soon, and open the phones up for folks to call in from South Africa and also other regions, because the great thing is we have so many listeners around the world. We can get a real perspective from people. So God bless you, Swiss Mountain, for calling in. And that's what I love about our listeners. These are real thinkers. It's not Mandela good or Mandela bad. It's not. No. It's much deeper of like what's really going on, what's really happening, because the West didn't go in and get rid of apartheid to help South Africa. They went in so they could absolutely strip any laws out and make everybody slaves. And that's my point is take and then we're going to our guest. Take what just happened in Ukraine. Ukraine voted to not enter the European Union, even though they'd wanted to for a decade. And the EU was ready to bring them in because they've seen that the EU is actually there to loot countries and literally steal everybody's pension funds, which they've done in Greece and Spain and Portugal and everywhere else, because the documents came out. That's what it was set up for. So then they're like, oh, you're run by Russia now. Well, no, I don't think Ukraine should be under Russia or it should be under the EU. It should be under the people of Ukraine. It's the same deal. They did not go with the EU because they love Russia. The Ukrainians hate the Russians. They used them pretty much as slaves. And killed 10 million of them and all the rest of them. That's white people killing white people. Man, it's the same story over and over again, just different skin color. And they'll use an excuse, well, you're a Ukrainian, so I can kill you. I mean, it's just like they'll have Christians, get killed by Muslims in Africa or whatever. Just it's the same people, same genetics. They just or one group's animus, one group's Christians. They kill each other. We need to have a culture of liberty, regardless of what color we are, of human liberty, and then that's our game. Because we do want to be in tribes. Well, I'm in the tribe of liberty, and I don't care what color you are. If you are having your rights violated, I'm going to come to your aid because I want people to come to my aid. I mean, where's the special interest for the individual? Where's the special interest for families? Where's the special interest for business owners? Where is it? I want real unity around liberty. And it's the only future we have, folks. And that's why they attack the Bible so much, because it's all in there if we'd follow it. People say, well, the religion's done all this. That's people twisting it. All right, I'm done ranting, and I appreciate him joining us. Now, I know we have another guest coming up, Pastor Manning, in the next hour. CJ, you told me my guest already. Is it guest or guest? Okay.
Yes. Pastor Manning is coming on.
Okay. So it's Eric Lee and his lawyer, and then Manning's coming on. Good. Okay, well, let me introduce them both. Eric Lee, of course, businessman arrested for loitering, carrying legal gun on his own property. He'd been harassed over being a gun owner. This is happening to us in Texas as well, folks. Your neighbor doesn't like you having guns, the police come. And he was arrested. His gun's taken. He hasn't gotten them back. This is an incredible story. So, David Knight, you please introduce his lawyer and him here on air, and then I've got some questions, but I'm on the road here. Go ahead. Mr. Lee, tell us who your lawyer is.
Shannon Briley.
Okay, well, fantastic. Who would like to speak first? Tell us what happened to you.
Oh, I'll start it. I was working, and I got off work, and on my way to the car, I figured I left my gun. So I had to run back in the store and get my gun. And there were some guys outside, just local guys that I know. And they was asking me questions, wanted to talk to me. And so I talked to him for a second before I got in my truck, and the police pulled up. And they said, "What's going on out here?" They had a car probably across the street or something. They seen us outside, and they said, "Do you have any drugs, any weapons?" And I said, "I have a gun on me, but it's my store gun." As soon as I said I had a gun, they just handcuffed me and threw me in the back of the car. And I said, "If you would let me finish, I would have put I can show you my license in my back pocket." So he didn't take the cuffs off. They left me cuffed, and he went into my back pocket and pulled out my license and ran it. And one of the cops, they were betting on me. One of them said, "I guarantee you, I bet you the gun's stolen." And so the other guy ran my license. He said, "Well, it's not stolen." And he said he cursed and said, "Damn." And I said to the officer, I said, "Are you serious? Are you mad because I'm doing the right thing out here?" And he just told me to be quiet, and he walked off. And so the other officer, I said, "Just do the right thing, man. What's gonna happen?" He said, "Well, I can't do nothing right now. I gotta wait for my sergeant to come." And so his sergeant finally came with probably like 6 more police officers, and they told me they came. My gun was registered, but it came up as a different caliber gun, but my numbers matched. And I said, "Well, I didn't put the thing in the system. I got all my records right here." And he said, "Well, we can't figure it out, so just take them to jail and we'll let the courts figure it out." And that's what happened.
And I want to get into what else happened to you and not getting the guns back. But here's the deal, and I know the Georgia laws as well. And I know we have your lawyer, Shannon Briley, who I'm very excited to know that we were able to get on. The guys that sent me the list, I'd overlooked it, so I apologize for that. But my issue here is this a case of having self-defense while being black, like driving while black or standing at a bus stop while black? Or is this a case of owning a gun and not being part of the government? And because I see this happen to everybody, but I guess particularly black folks aren't allowed to defend themselves. I know in Chicago and D.C. it seems to be cities with a lot of black folks where they deny people the Second Amendment, so only the criminals have it. My issue is you could have had a gun anyways as a business owner on your own property or in your car under Georgia law. It's just like Texas law. They are now arresting people in Texas and other areas who will have a rifle on the back of your truck that's totally legal. They just say, "I'm going to go ahead and take you in anyways." And then, as Ammo Land reported, you have to spend more on lawyers to get your gun back than what it's worth. And so this is really a criminal authoritarian action. So tell folks what else happened once you went to jail. Your lawyer, Shannon Briley, jump in any time to tell us where this is going. But, I mean, this is basically a kidnapping. It's official oppression. But because the police are doing it, I guess it's okay according to them.
And then what happened next was they went in and took me to jail. They towed my car, and I had to bond out of jail and then pay money to get my car back out. And that's about it on that. And then I had to call. I went to court, and the judge and everybody apologized and said I shouldn't be here. They're sorry that I had to go through that, and they just dropped all the charges. And they said I would talk to somebody if I was you.
Have they given your gun back yet?
No, sir. They gave me the runaround when I went to, I got my papers from the court to go get my gun, and I took it to the place they told me to take it to, and they gave me, they said I got to get in contact with that officer. So I called the officer's headquarters, and they kept giving me the runaround. They gave me about 6 different precincts to check. They said, "Go here, you're not here, try this precinct, try this precinct." So I got in my car and I rode, and I took pictures of all the precincts I went to. Then I called so much that the dispatch, they would tell me that, your best option is to just drive up. He gets here at, like they said, like 9 o'clock. He gets here at 9 and just pull up and jump out on him. That's your best way to catch him. I said, okay.
Now, I mean, I think you're alluding to that. Do you think somebody tattled on you for exercising the right to have a firearm for your own business? Because I see that it's an unclaimed freight and a grocery store, furniture. I mean, it's the type of place that would get robbed. I mean, if a business owner can't have a gun, I mean, I guarantee you, if I ran a convenience store or a store like yours, especially outside Atlanta, I mean, I guarantee you I'd be packing.
Yeah.
What's so egregious about this is that the average response time for officers in this area is well over an hour, particularly during shift changes and late at the evening or early in the afternoon. So if he was put into a situation wherein he had to defend himself or his family that owns the business, he wouldn't be able to do so without a firearm. This is an area that have repeated robberies, and law enforcement had initially suggested to him to get a firearm to keep the location. And, you know, what's so egregious about this incident with DeKalb County is that this wasn't just the actions of one rogue officer. This incident was co-signed by a supervisor on every level, initially by his immediate supervisor, then by the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners. And Mr. Lee filing a lawsuit was a last resort. He didn't just jump into this. We sent a letter to DeKalb County Internal Affairs informing them what happened. We sent a letter to the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners informing them what happened. And nothing, we have gotten no response. And it's been well over a year. So well,
that's right. I mean, I should have pointed out. This is systemic. I should have pointed out this is a year ago. You're suing. Of course, I missed making the big point. Thank you so much for bringing it up, Shannon Briley, the lawyer for Mr. Lee. And when Mr. Lee's rights are violated, all of our rights are violated. And obviously, mid-level police that are smart say, get a gun, you're having a lot of crime problems. But then higher up, the politicos want to persecute gun owners. And they have persecuted his human rights, his civil rights. This is a big violation. Where do you go from here? What is the lawsuit calling for?
Right now, it's in federal court. Of course, they filed a motion to dismiss, which is completely have no basis for. But, you know, he's not trying to punish the taxpayers. But, you know, at this point, you know, he wants reasonable compensation for what he has been through. You know, there's the claim, you know, we have allegations here of battery, false imprisonment. You know, we understand, and both of my parents were police officers, and I was a police officer for 7 years in Atlanta. I know cops have a hard job. But the problem with this situation is that the officers weren't in a situation where they had to make a split-second decision. They had all of the facts available to them, and to dispel probable cause. And they looked at it, and they gave it the middle finger and said, no, we're going to make an arrest anyway, even though he has this is private property, even though he has a license, and even though he's not a convicted felon. So
how do they claim you can't loiter at a business that you work at and own? I mean, so if I've got like rifles, in my office at the radio studio. I mean, are the cops going to come arrest me because I'm loitering?
If you live in DeKalb County, they might.
So where is this coming from? I mean, I hope they all lose their job. I hope you get $1 million. This is how we punish corruption, or my guns are next. Why are they doing this? I mean, is this some kind of political directive? Or?
Well, I believe there's a lot of pressure on officers to make arrests. It's called getting bodies. You have to have a certain amount of bodies a week, or else you get punished and sent to morning wash. Instead, the upper echelon of the police department, they don't need to be looking at who's getting bodies. They need to look at who's getting convictions. They need to look at the case as it's carried out, or who's making arrests that lead to negotiated pleas. They don't need to be looking at just who's pulling in bodies. So it comes from the top, saying, bring us in these bodies. And, you know, if they want a job that doesn't require any thought, they need to, you know, get a job at a factory, putting bolts on a car or on a machine. They don't need to become police officers where people's liberty depends on, you know, their decisions. They have all the information available. Absolutely.
I mean, in the past, you wanted to get bust and actually get real criminals. Now it's just get as many. In fact, I've talked to DWI task force police, and they're honest about it. I've had them in studio, former ones that are gone on to be lawyers. We'll come back and talk about this. That's why I know people that have been arrested just for saying, no, I hadn't been drinking and smarting off. They go, fine, I'm just taking you in anyways. Because it's not about getting a quota on convictions or even indictments or, you know, things that are a real case. It's just raw arrest.
Exactly.
And and Austin police on the DWI task force, folks, they will arrest a teetotaling church mouse. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about this man and the persecution. Going right back to our guest. Again, I'm on the road here. David Knight's riding shotgun. Got a lot of breaking news coming up in the next hour. Then Pastor James David Manning's joining us. But Eric Lee, who is a family man who owns a furniture store, where he was arrested for loitering and carrying a firearm in violation of concealed carry law. By the way, he even went and got the concealed carry, which is above and beyond what you got to have in Georgia. A police supervisor came to the scene and approved of the arrest. The county still will not return his gun. He's filed a federal lawsuit. And I love how his lawyer is such a nice lady, and he's so nice. They're apologizing for the lawsuit. You know, it's time we start suing when the government violates our rights, because they're in Congress having hearings now about Obama becoming a dictator, basically, and doing whatever he wants, and the other agencies just acting how they want. The government is out of control. So Eric Lee and your lawyer, Shannon Briley, anything else you guys would like to add about where this is going? Please don't apologize for fighting for my rights and everybody else's rights. God bless you.
Thank you. We just hope that law enforcement can learn from this and understand that their job is very important, and they serve a very important purpose, and it requires that every single call they go on, they put the thought into it that it requires. It's like a medical doctor or any other very serious profession, and we just want training to occur and learning to occur here, so this doesn't continue to happen.
Yeah, she said it. She said it all. She said it all, and all I can say, I just want them to just do the right thing, and I just want justice for everybody. Just do the right thing.
Looking at this, I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware, Ammo Land and the NRA have all reported on it. But I know almost everyone I know, including a pretty famous gun person with a national gun TV show. I'll just leave it at that, because I know, because I'm friends with him, and he's had the police repeatedly called to his little ranch with a shooting range and a berm, and I'm not trying to be mean. It's true. It's Californians that have moved here. They call the police on you when they hear shooting. I know people that have 200-acre ranchettes that are out in the middle of nowhere. People hear gunshots, and the cops come sometimes and actually take your guns or arrest you. I had the manager of a store come up just last week and said it happened to him on his 200-something-acre family piece of property. The DPS came in and they said, your neighbors felt scared hearing the gunshots. You're going to jail. I mean, this is a reign of terror. Any comments on that?
I think with a lot of the mass shootings, there's such a stigma now to weapons in general that the police can go in there and arrest somebody who has a gun just because guns in general have become so stigmatized. And people don't understand that we have fundamental, basic constitutional rights to own a weapon, to prevent the government from getting too big and taking away our rights and living in a police state. And they don't understand that the isolated acts of certain individuals who abuse weapons should not be used to taint, our rights, in the entire population. So I think
exactly, and I mean, increased gun ownership since 1992 has caused a 51% drop in violent crime. That's the FBI's own numbers.
Right, exactly.
Guns are making us safer.
Right. If people were afraid that whoever they were going up to rob or burglarize was armed, they would, certainly think twice before going and, committing these crimes. And they,
sure.
The citizens, law-abiding citizens in the Metro Atlanta area wouldn't be terrorized by crime. If the police want their call volume to decrease, they should encourage law-abiding citizens to have weapons.
Absolutely. Eric, in closing, did you say, I'd be laughing at these police and saying shame on you when they took me to jail for no reason. What did you say to them in the squad car?
We just talking because, I couldn't say too much because when we pulled off, I said, man, why are you doing this? I said, just do the right thing. You know you're wrong. You know you have nothing. He said, well, it's not up to me anymore. And he turned his music up all the way on full blast and took off flying down the road. And I couldn't hear, he couldn't hear me, I couldn't hear him.
Hold on. Let's do 5 more minutes. I got a 1-minute break. I want to do 5 more with you. All I know is this. We have an authoritarian directive in Washington that's bipartisan because of a lot of corruption going on. They want a police state. And it's up to all of us to exercise our Second Amendment. That's why I love the open carries that have not caused any problems nationwide like we had at the Alamo, is because it shows, hey, it's not dirty that I have a gun. And I liken it to Martin Luther King going into the places where you couldn't